Imagine a giant, heavy iron door deep inside a castle. Behind this door there are secrets that powerful people want to keep hidden forever. They lock the door, throw away the key, and hope that nobody ever finds it. They hope the world forgets. But there is a rule about secrets that everyone should know. Secrets do not like to stay in the dark. They want to be found. They want to be seen. No matter how deep you bury a secret, or how much money you pay to hide it, the truth always finds a tiny crack to slip through. For a long time, the world looked at the royal family and saw a perfect fairy tale. We saw a prince falling in love with a beautiful actress. We saw a wedding with golden carriages and cheering crowds. It looked like a Disney movie come to life. Everyone wanted to believe in the happy ending. But while the cameras were flashing and the people were cheering, there was something else happening in the shadows. There was a different story, a darker story, waiting for its turn to be told. It is a story about hidden photos, quiet whispers, and a past that was carefully erased from the history books. Usually when we hear stories about princes and princesses, we think of magic and goodness. But this story is different. It is about what happens when the bright lights of the palace meet the dark corners of the real world. It is about a mystery that has been growing for years, one puzzle piece at a time. And right now, the lock on that heavy iron door is breaking. The door is creaking open, and what is inside might change everything we thought we knew. This is the story they didn't want you to hear. This is the moment the silence ends. For many years, people whispered quietly to each other. They talked about certain photographs. These were images that nobody was supposed to see. They were files on a computer that seemed to vanish like a ghost the second anyone tried to look for them. If you tried to find them, they were gone. According to the people who know secrets, these were not just normal photos of a vacation or a party. These were very special and very dangerous pictures. They were pictures that showed Meghan Markle in the same room as a man named Jeffrey Epstein. If these pictures are real, they would change everything. They would rewrite the whole story the world believed about Meghan. We all thought we knew who she was before she put on a sparkling tiara and walked into royal history. But these photos suggest a different past. For a very long time, it seemed like the rich and powerful people had erased these photos forever. Agencies that sell photos wouldn't let anyone see them. Old archives were empty. Even the big libraries that keep millions of photos reportedly locked them away behind special codes so nobody could open them. But then a mistake happened. Something slipped. Maybe someone stopped guarding the files, or maybe someone just made an error. Suddenly, the images started to pop up again. It happened quietly at first, just a tiny flicker here on a website and a reappearance there on a blog. Then suddenly, the thing everyone thought was buried deep underground was staring right back at us in the bright light. That is the exact moment this new story begins. It doesn't start with the big royal wedding. It doesn't start with the romance. It starts with the pictures they tried to hide but failed. Once a secret escapes from its box, it doesn't just crawl slowly. It runs fast. As soon as the photos came back, old voices started talking again. These were voices from inside the dark world that Jeffrey Epstein and his helper, Ghislaine Maxwell, built together. One of those voices actually came from Ghislaine herself. She is sitting in a prison cell right now. She has nothing left to protect and even less left to lose. The notes from her talks claim she spoke about Meghan's years in Hollywood. She gave hints about connections that people ignored when Meghan became a duchess. But Ghislaine wasn't the only one talking. Years before this, a woman named Virginia Roberts Giuffer reportedly mentioned Meghan's name, too. Virginia was getting ready for a big legal battle against Prince Andrew. Her team of lawyers even thought about asking Meghan to come and answer questions. Why would they do that? They believed Meghan lived in the United States, so the court could order her to speak. They believed she had been close enough to Prince Andrew at parties to possibly hear or see important things. They believed her life in the past touched the edges of Epstein's scary world. Now, none of this meant Meghan did anything bad herself, but in the world of detectives and investigations, being close to people matters. Knowing things matters. When two people who lived inside that dark circle mention the same name, investigators listen carefully, even if the rest of the world ignores it. So when the photos slipped back into public view, these old whispers suddenly became much louder. For the first time, the story wasn't just about Meghan the Duchess. It was about Meghan, the mystery. Once these puzzle pieces came back to the surface, researchers started to notice something strange. It was something that kept repeating. It was a pattern that went far beyond the United Kingdom. Meghan was not the first woman to come from a normal life, marry a prince, and then face questions about her past with Epstein. There was Sophia of Sweden and Mette Marit of Norway. Both of these women, according to new files, had crossed paths with Epstein years before they joined royal families. Both had lived lives that nobody noticed, but those lives came back to haunt their palaces when the documents finally came out. The pattern was simple, but it gives you chills. It involves girls who once lived quietly on the edges of rich and famous groups. Later, they stepped into royal castles, only to have the shadows from their past follow them inside. And that is where the Meghan story becomes something bigger than just mean gossip. It becomes a blueprint. It is a map that Europe has seen before, because when files reappear and photos come back, they don't just expose one single person, they expose a whole system. Now that the early whispers are out in the open, the story moves to a part of Meghan's life that almost everyone missed. These are her years before she was royal. These are the years before the newspaper headlines, before the fame, and before the love story. She lived quietly, but she did not live simply. According to sources, Meghan's world during this time was not the hard work of a struggling actress that most people imagined. In 2015, she was reportedly flown all the way to Istanbul for the opening of a place called Soho House. She wasn't there as a famous star. Insiders called her a party girl. She was invited to fill the room, bring energy, and make the event look fancy. She wasn't famous then. She wasn't the main story. She was simply there in the background. But that background was not normal. It was a world filled with billionaires, people with money to invest, and powerful leaders who treated big cities like their own personal playgrounds. This wasn't just a one-time thing. Around this time, Meghan was traveling to New York a lot. This happened often during the same times when Prince Andrew was also in the city. Nobody asked questions then because nobody knew her name. Even the actors she worked with on the show Suits allegedly wondered how she paid for such fancy travel. She flew in the best seats on the plane, business class. She stayed in the most expensive hotels. She moved with people who had way more money than a TV actress usually has. On the outside, it looked glamorous and shiny, but behind the scenes, it was something else entirely. It was a network. It was a lifestyle. It was a set of connections that quietly shaped the next part of her life. The world didn't notice her then, but the people around her certainly did. To understand how Meghan ended up in the middle of such elite circles, you have to look at two very important moments. The first one happened in 2006 at a party in the Hamptons. Famous people like Harvey Weinstein and Mandy Moore were there. Meghan was there too. She was young, unknown, and still trying to find her way. She wasn't having her picture taken on red carpets. She didn't make the news. No one mentioned her name. But she was already standing in rooms that normal actresses could only dream of entering. The second moment came 10 years later, in February 2016. This was the same time Meghan later claimed she first met Harry. It was the start of the fairy tale. But according to an actor she used to work with, she mentioned meeting Harry in February. This was the very same month she allegedly went to a Yacht Week event. Yacht Weeks were famous for mixing businessmen, models, and young women who were entering these rich social groups. Sources say this was where people met each other. It wasn't magic, it was networking. People met, deals were made, and friendships were formed. Whether this was truly where Meghan met Harry is unknown, but what is known is that this was the final chapter of her hidden life. It was her last year as someone who lived behind the scenes, not in front of cameras, because soon after this, everything changed. If there is one person whose words cut through the shine of Meghan's past, it is John Lefevre. He is a man who spent years organizing fancy parties and private events for some of the richest people in the world. He wasn't just guessing. He wasn't making things up. He was speaking from inside that world. According to his claims, Meghan was well known in those circles as a yacht girl. This means someone who moved easily through elite parties and private gatherings on huge luxury boats. He described her as being very close to becoming the girlfriend of a super-rich man named J.H.O. Lowe. He suggested she stood closer to that world of billions than anyone realized. He also claimed that after Meghan married into royalty, her old photos from Dubai vanished from the internet. They were scrubbed clean, as though someone wanted to erase every trace of a life that didn't match her new royal image. John Lefevre didn't tell these stories as just gossip. He told them as someone who had seen these places with his own eyes. His words paint a picture of Meghan's early life that is very different. It wasn't just a simple job in Hollywood. It was a journey through some of the richest, most secret, and most powerful groups in the world. As the strings of Meghan's past began to show, another part of the story moved into the legal world. In the legal world, every detail matters. Even small things become pieces of evidence. When Virginia Roberts Giuffre got her case ready against Prince Andrew, her team of lawyers looked through years of history. They looked at events, relationships, and places tied to Epstein's circle. It wasn't just about who did something bad. It was about who was there, who heard things, and who saw the patterns. According to sources, Meghan Markle's name appeared during this process. She wasn't accused of doing anything wrong. She was looked at as a deposition witness. There were 3 reasons for this. First, Meghan lived in the United States, so the court had the power to call her. Second, she had reportedly been socially close to Prince Andrew during certain years. This meant she could have seen things or heard conversations. Third, her social world in the past allegedly overlapped with parts of Epstein's wider circle. That alone made her a person of interest. This wasn't a rumor made up by fans or magazines. This was the thinking of a legal team preparing one of the biggest cases in history. They weren't looking for gossip. They were looking for facts, background, and witnesses who could fill in the blanks. The world never saw that questioning happen, but the fact that her name was considered at all shows just how close Meghan's past came to stepping into a courtroom. Behind the palace walls, silence is never empty. Silence is a plan. According to insiders, the royal family had been afraid for a long time. They feared the moment Meghan's old photographs and friendships might come out. They weren't unaware of her past. They simply understood what would happen better than anyone else. To the public, Meghan was sold as a fresh start. She was the helper, the actress, the modern Duchess, and the symbol of a new kind of royal family. But big institutions like the monarchy survive by protecting their image. They don't survive by rewriting their history. When the lost files and images appeared, it wasn't just Meghan who faced trouble. It was the House of Windsor, because every royal scandal becomes a problem for the whole country. Every secret revealed becomes a crisis. And this time the royal household allegedly stood at a crossroads. Would they continue protecting Meghan, or would they quietly step aside and let the story come out? The silence that followed told us a lot. It wasn't defensive. It wasn't supportive. It was just absent. It was as though they already knew what was coming and understood there was no stopping it. Now every story reaches a moment where the lights go dim, the room grows quiet, and the truth steps forward. It comes uninvited, unplanned, and unstoppable. This is that moment. The photos that came back, the files that were hidden for so long, and the whispers from the people who lived inside Epstein's world all point to one real thing. The past never stays buried forever. Meghan walked into royalty carrying stories the world never knew. These were stories that lived in private airplane flights, quiet invitations, parties in the Hamptons, gatherings on yachts, and friendships that were forgotten the second she became a duchess. For a time, it all stayed hidden. It was protected and shielded, but a secret only survives if everyone involved wants it to survive. In this case, someone stopped protecting her. Now the photos are out. The names are appearing again. The connections are being traced line by line, city by city, and year by year. The royal family is an institution that has survived wars, betrayals, and hundreds of years of scandal. Now they stand back and watch. They watch because some storms cannot be stopped. They can only be revealed. What happens next is uncertain. More files could come out, more witnesses could speak, more shadows from the past could step into the bright light. But one thing is very clear to everyone watching. This is not the end of the story. This is only the first crack in a much larger wall, and once a wall starts to crack, it never breaks in silence. The sound of it breaking will be heard all around the world.